Firstly, my morning routine at the moment and moving forward ever since we finished up with the CrossFit Games is waking up at 4:30 in the morning. So why? Traditionally leading up into the games and just in general the last couple of years, I've been going to bed about 10:30, 11 o'clock, waking up about 7, 8 o'clock when I'm really tired, and really just wasting a lot of time after I get home eating dinner and watching Netflix, and I'm just trying to use my time more productively. Wake up at 4:30, get all my programming for the gym, for the online, for other affiliates, for athletes done in the morning, and any admin, any social media stuff that I need to do, which leaves the rest of my day completely open for training, coaching, getting content like this up for you guys and recording it. And yeah, it's just a much better use of my time versus trying to get done in the middle of the day or at night time in between training sessions and stuff like that. So that's my morning routine. Let me know if any of you guys are doing similar stuff, getting up early in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I know I personally follow Jocko Willink. I've read his book, listened to his podcast for a long time, and he's up 4:30 every morning. So let me try and adapt to similar sort of things. Some of you may have seen I've been posting a photo of my watch every morning. And it's not an ego thing, it's just I have an alarm set to post a photo of my watch or a clock every morning, and it's to try and give me some accountability. So if I say I'm going to do it and post it, then I have another reason to get out of bed and make sure that I'm out of bed. So my alarm's set for 4:30, and at 4:32 I have another alarm set to post a photo. Then it sort of keeps me on track, not just laying in bed on Instagram for 10 minutes in the morning or something like that. So I have my first alarm 4:30 to wake up, 4:32 post a photo, 4:40 to get out of the shower, 4:45 do any social media or vlogging, podcasting content that I need to do in the morning. So any stuff that I've got up, like meals in the morning, anything that I'm doing to put up for you guys. And then at 5 o'clock in the morning I start my work day, and I have an hour or 2 hours before I head into the gym. Now Sunday that's going to change. I'm going to do some early morning training, which I'm going to document for you guys, which will come up in future videos. And that's my morning routine at the moment. I head into the gym. At the moment I'm doing a strength session in the morning. Like I said, the game was only 10 days ago, so I've been doing a strength session in the morning and then doing kind of whatever I feel like in the afternoon. But that's all going to change pretty shortly. So this leads me on to my the next subject, which is expressions of fitness. So I come from a fitness background of being outdoors, doing long runs, long distance stuff, surf life-saving, triathlons, football, bodybuilding, everything, but a lot of outdoors type stuff like ski paddling and all that. So something that occurred to me in the lead up to this year's games, amongst the financial stress and the physical, mental tolls of just the whole season in general, as varied as CrossFit is, you spend a lot of time in a CrossFit gym, doing CrossFit movements, weightlifting, more than you spend outside of the gym, especially a lot more than I'm traditionally used to from the sports that I come from, where you spend pretty much no time in the gym, maybe once or twice a week, or one session a day for a little bit, and then the majority of your time is spent outdoors. And for me, a lot of the majority of the time was spent by myself doing long distance stuff like running, swimming, ski paddling, stuff like that. You get a lot of time to decompress, be in your own headspace, and sort of nearly like be in a meditative meditative state and work through a lot of things in your that are going on in your life. And I find with CrossFit, a lot of the training requires so much focus. So like lifting, metcons, anything like that. And especially when you're getting ready, maybe not so much if you're just doing a class and enjoying it, obviously lifting, but metcons and workouts and all that sort of stuff, especially the closer you get to the games, you're really concentrating on like every second, can I be maximizing my breathing, how quickly am I making my transitions, my rep count, my round count, rep count, keeping my splits of my rounds the same or negative, splitting. If there's someone else in the workout with me, keeping track of where they're at, counting their rounds or their reps so I can know when I can rest or can't rest, all that sort of stuff. Really doesn't give you, it requires a lot of mental focus. Or the best in the world at the sport do a workout not focused, and they're going to get beaten by a whole lot of people that may not be physically at their level but were really switched on and prepared for that workout. So it's very demanding mentally, and I found that's something that, especially leading to this year's games, I didn't do a whole lot of running, especially not outside at all. Did a little bit like on my air runner, and like I said in my last video, we're mainly focusing on strength and power output, coming back off that 6-month back injury that I had. I went for a run, a 10k run the other night, and the first 5k's, first 20 minutes were just, I could just feel all this tension wound up in my mental process and just my inner thoughts, the things that go through your mind when you start exercising, and usually whatever is going through your mind when you're exercising is kind of an exaggerated overflow of what's going through your mind in your day-to-day, or at least your subconscious, and I think that people that do yoga, meditation, anything like that, the first initial part of that, you get a resistance, and the resistance is like, if it's negative, that resistance usually like the overflow of whatever is going on in your life, whether it's like work stress, financial stress, relationship stress, whatever it may be. And then the longer that you go through that, you work through it and you let it go, and then you'll find that bliss after the runner's high, all that sort of stuff, and that content with whatever it is that you're doing. And the longer that you don't do these practices, the harder and longer it becomes until you can reach that state, because you've got more to deal with. So I think that as diverse and all-inclusive as the sport of CrossFit, especially at the games level, it is very limited in the way that you train and the things that you train, the places that you train can become very, very repetitive. And time domains, or just doing workouts in a gym, even if they're completely different, can become very similar. So one workout in a gym versus another workout in the gym later that day could be different time domains and movements, but very similar. Mentally you're in the same place doing similar things, and we need, I think for me personally at least, you need to be careful that you're still finding that practice, whatever it may be, and for me physically, like going and meditating every day is good, but it's not enough. I like to go and run or swim or do something long, an hour plus, that really helps me unwind and work through some things, as well as while I'm still using my body and expressing that fitness, like running, stuff like that. There's a lot of areas of nutrition that I'm really interested in. Not keto, but being fat adapted, doing some intermittent fasting or prolonged fasting and all the health benefits of that. Really, and And with the way that the season is, or the level of athlete that is at the games, there's not a lot of room to experiment. You've got to be pretty switched on all year round, and you have to eat a very specific way to recover and fuel for the type of training that is demanded or required to be at a games level athlete. So, and then time. So it takes a lot of time to train for the games every day, all year round. And when you combine all these things together, the amount of time, the way you have to eat, and the style of training and the places where you're training, it does become very limited in that regard. So, an all-encompassing sport still becomes very limited, and I think that's something that you kind of forget about because you're always doing different things, or training different things: clean, snatch, deadlift, metcon, AMRAP, air dive, run. But they're all might all be in the same gym with the same time domains or different time domains, but you know what I'm getting at. That can be very limited. It's not like one day you're going for a hike, the next day you're going for a surf or bike ride or something like that. There's only a very small amount of time spent on those periphery things in opposition to how much time is spent on the other things. And again, that's very different for someone who's just doing CrossFit as a training modality, but I'm speaking specifically of expressions of fitness for someone that's trying to be a games athlete or even get on the podium at the games, or win the games, anything like that. So it's got me, some things I've been thinking about lately, and then also looking at things from having competed twice at the games. Last year, I believe fully I deserve my where I finished, and this year I'm not complaining about where I finished, but I don't think it is an expression of where my fitness was at for whatever reasons. It's got me sort of thinking about, with the cuts and everything, what is it to compete in an individual sport? So if you're competing in something like football or something like that's a game, I wonder, there's a pure enjoyment for playing that game, participating in the sport of football or soccer or tennis or whatever, and then there's the competitive aspect of it as well, but they're both mixed together. Whereas CrossFit, you're testing fitness, and yes, it's enjoyable to do, but it's different to a sport in some regards to playing football or going surfing or something like that, and especially different to a team sport because it's a fitness thing. You're doing exercise as a sport. You're not doing a sport and then you have an exercise to make you better at that sport. And so what I've been thinking about is, when we compete individually in a sport like CrossFit, it's very much we're being tested. We're testing ourselves against a bunch of other people doing the same tests of fitness to see who is better across those tests, and that becomes the sport. Who can perform all the tests better, or more proficiently, however you want to say it. But that becomes a sport. It's a bunch of exercises put together over a weekend or over an entire week at the games level. A bunch of athletes are tested over those tests of fitness, and then who is best at expressing their fitness according to those tests. And so when I first started competing in CrossFit, it was because I wanted to be the best at the sport. It was never really because I enjoyed CrossFit as a sport. I enjoy doing CrossFit, but I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to be the fittest. Whereas I wouldn't necessarily say that I would enjoy going to do CrossFit like I enjoy going for a bike ride or going surfing, if that makes sense. So that's interesting. So I didn't have success in the sport straight away, and still to this day I haven't had success where I've been able to be financially reliant on being a full-time athlete from the sport of CrossFit. I've been a manager of a gym, CrossFit coach, opened my own gym, online programming, all that stuff that supported me, sponsors that have supported me to allow me to compete, but I haven't had that success which has allowed me to be financially stable from the sport. And so I wonder, and there's something I've been thinking, when we compete in a sport like CrossFit, how much of that competitive drive of wanting to be the best across being tested at different fitness tests, how much of that comes from some kind of insecurities that we may have of like wanting to prove ourselves at being the best versus really enjoying a sport and then wanting to do well in it. It's like football or something, genuinely enjoying playing that sport and then being a part of a team. I wonder, and this is completely a personal thing for me and it might be different for everyone, but I wonder what those differences are and how they affect the longevity and enjoyment over multiple years of being a CrossFit Games athlete. So for example, someone like Rich Froning, who at the end of his career said like, I just don't have it mentally, I want to do other things. So I wonder, like, after you've got financial freedom, you've proven that you're the best, at least to yourself, whether you've won the games or not. Everyone gets into the sport for different things. Some people it's to make regionals or compete RX or make the games once. Some people it's to win the games. I wonder, once you've done that and you've answered some of those questions, you no longer have those insecurities that you need answered or validated. I know for me, when I first started, I had something to prove. I no longer have anything to prove to anyone, and the reason why I compete is just to test myself. And it was a tough transition for me to make mentally, because what I used to use as fuel to fuel my training and my passion was that need to prove myself and insecurities, and then that, because I didn't have the success straight away, had to go through all these life lessons and personal growth to become good at other things in other aspects of my life, like owning a gym, being a head coach, being a manager. It forced me to tick a lot of those self-growth boxes outside of the sport versus doing it inside of the sport, and reframe my why I compete. And now it's interesting for me, reflecting on the games this year, in asking myself, okay, so I know what it takes to make the games, I know where I'm at physically, mentally. What is my reason of wanting to go back and win or challenge for the podium? What am I trying to prove? And then how does that look with the cuts and having someone else dictate to a very heavy degree, more so than what it used to be, what that result is and what those tests are going to be and how long you participate. And I know that it's always been that way, but when there was no cuts, it had a different feel, at least, I guess. Like, you go and you, regardless of what the workouts are, you test it across all of them. Now, if there's an error in any area, an error from me, an error from a judge, an error from a piece of equipment, anything, that can really change your whole outcome, and can change the outcome of where you place, change the outcome of financial situation, change the outcome of where you see yourself. Because whether we like it or not, I can sit here and say I know that I was as fit as X, Y, and Z, and as strong as X, Y, and Z, etc. But it still doesn't mean anything because I finished where I finished. If I had have done exactly the same, been exactly the same shape, executed differently, ended up somewhere different, you'd have a different reflection, a different opinion of where you are and how fit you are. And that's just something that, whether you like it or not, is always going to be there when you enter into a sport, regardless of where you think you know you're at and where your numbers are at and how fit you think you are, how strong you think you are. You enter into a competition, the competition finishes and you get ranked. It's nearly arrogant or foolish to think, well, that's not a true representation, or that's not accurate, I deserve to be there. I mean, we've all seen those people, and there might be some validity to it, but at the end of the day, it's more honest to say that's a reflection of where I'm at and I need to do better than that's bullshit, that's rigged, whatever. I'm actually a top 3. I actually won that fight, that race, whatever. The judge let me down. It's not a true reflection. So that's an interesting thought that I've been having. If these cuts are going to be in place, if the cuts are going to be executed the way that they were, the game's going to be run the way they are, the test is totally changed, essentially the sport at the games has totally changed dynamically from what it used to be and what it was when I entered the sport and what I was trying to get from the sport. Because I've never competed in the sport to try and win money. It was always, I want to be the fittest, and I want to be tested, and I want to be tested against everybody over every workout, and I want to see where I come out, and I want to improve on that every year until I win. And that was my thing with competing in this sport and moving from the sport I was in previously. And now that that's changed, I'm older and I don't have a lot of those insecurities that I did have when I first started. My question in my reflections after the games has been, well, how does this sport fit in the new dynamic into the questions that I need answered for myself, to be happy with myself, to lead the life that I'm happy with and be the person I'm happy with? Because at the end of the day, we all compete in some way. We compete at work, we compete in our, if you're single, you compete in the dating game, we compete in the gym. There's always these little competitions going on. We compete with ourselves mentally to answer questions that we have in life, in all aspects of our lives, and we want to have them answered because it brings fulfillment, and we're always looking to know the whys behind what we do, the whys behind where we should be going, why we feel the way that we do, like who we are, where we're going, mysteries of life, all that sort of stuff. And then we take that over into our chosen sports or hobbies to further have questions answered about why we enjoy things, how far can we be pushed, how far can we take things, how do we match up to other people doing the same things as us. And so this isn't to be, the point that I'm trying to make is not whether or not I want to compete at the games. That's not what I'm trying to say, or make it seem like I don't want to compete or I do want to compete. It's just an honest reflection of why I compete, why I came into the sport, and then the answers, trying to get the questions I'm asking myself to get those answers that, like you, I have, you have, we all share. and why I compete, the questions that I'm trying to answer for myself. So it's interesting, and I think it's like very important that we always reflect, especially at the end of something. So like the CrossFit Games or the season, we reflect and go through this analysis, and essentially like, why are we going to keep going? Why would I compete again? Why would I not compete again? Pros and cons, where my life is at, and we should do that with our work, with our relationships, with everything that we do, and find out, does it still match up with those questions? Do I still have questions that I'm asking myself, that what I'm doing is going to help me answer those questions? And if not, then do I need to reflect, reset my goals and change direction? And that may mean moving location. Does it mean getting another job? Does it mean starting a new hobby, whatever it may be for each one of you? But I think at the end of the day, like, everything that we do comes down to finding enjoyment, and enjoyment usually comes from getting questions answered that we are always asking ourselves. So that's what I'm sort of processing and going through at the moment, which is interesting. So I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on that, and maybe hear what you guys think about that, any advice, and if you're going through a lot of the same processes, or maybe if this process can help you, maybe a little light switch went off in your head, something to think about, and a little update on where I'm at and the things I'm thinking about, my morning routine, some things I'm thinking about in regards to sport, fitness, and expressions of fitness and the limitations. Let me know what you think.